Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov with Chelle Law, and we assist dentists with employment contract issues. Today I'm talking about everything you need to know about a dental associate employment agreement. So this is just a very broad overview of what needs to be included in a dental employment contract, things you just need to consider all around, how to negotiate and interact with your future employer. So first, let's talk about what needs to be included in a dental employment contract. So the first thing I always look for when I'm reviewing a dental employment contract is how long is it for? Most dental contracts actually are kind of evergreen contracts, they call them. They just continue on until either party terminates them according to the contract. I have seen contracts that are anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And then normally there's a automatic renewal unless you give notice of intent not to renew. So you're going to see how long is your contract for. Then the next thing I look is how do you get out of it? So normally in dental contracts, there are two types of ways to terminate the contract. So there is a with cause termination. Normally your employer can do this if you do any of the enumerated things on the contract. They're normally pretty egregious. You lose your license to practice, you commit a crime, you're not insurable, you cannot bill insurance companies or Medicaid, Medicare. Then they can terminate the contract for cause. Normally it's immediate or there's a very short notice period. Sometimes there's a way for you to terminate your contract for cause, and normally that's just if the employer breaches the contract of any of the terms. So for example, they just stop paying you, or they are trying to make you do services that you didn't agree to do, things like that. And then the second way to terminate it is without cause. And this should be in every employment contract. There should be a way out. There might be some consequences. You might have to pay back some bonuses, reimburse for something, but there should be a way out. So there always should be a without cause termination. And what that states is just that either party, with or without cause, you don't even have to give a reason, may terminate the contract. You just have to give notice. Normally it's anywhere from 60 to 90 days. You'll give your notice. And then after that, you go your separate ways. The next thing that you need to know about dental contracts are your compensation should be easily figured out. You should be able to look at your contract and know what you're getting paid for what and when. So normally dental contracts are a little bit different than other healthcare providers. I would say the majority of them are just straight collections. So you may get a guaranteed base salary for 6 months to a year. And then after that, you're going to get straight collections, percentages, starting at 20%, and they kind of go up from there. It really just depends. And what that means is that anything that you bill out for your services and the practice collects, you will get a percentage of that. And you'll also want to know when are you going to get paid. It should be either biweekly or monthly for those collections. So those are the most important things. Now, as well, you're going to want to know, is there a non-compete clause? So that's going to be under your restrictive covenants. The restrictive covenants are going to have things like a non-solicitation clause, a non-compete clause, sometimes confidentiality is in there too. Restrictive covenants are just simply a promise not to do something. A lot of them are definitely enforceable during your employment, but they continue after. Now, these are really important. The most important probably would be the non-compete clause. You want to make sure that, first of all, your state enforces non-competes. There are several states where they're not enforceable, so they shouldn't even be in the contract. However, if they're enforceable in your state, you're going to want to read that non-compete clause very carefully. It will say it's normally for a specific period of time. They're normally around a year. And it will say that you're restricted from providing like dental services within a mile radius. That may be your primary location, or it could be any location, especially with corporate practices. You want to be careful that miles does not attach to all the locations because it can knock out a huge area for you. So what I think you need to know when you're reading your contract is when you look at the non-compete clause, do you understand it? How is it going to affect you when your job is done? Are you going to have to up and move your family? Will you know if you're in violation or not? That is definitely something you want to negotiate, the non-compete clause, so that you know whenever your contract ends that you're going to be able to easily find work. Ranges really depend on where you are in the United States, to be honest. If you're in, New York City or city area, the miles are going to be a lot smaller, maybe 1 mile. New York City actually might be even city blocks. If you're in a rural area, it can be 10 to 20 miles from your location. So that's the non-competes within the restrictive covenants. Confidentiality normally goes a little bit further than HIPAA. Obviously, that's going to cover your patient information. But normally confidentiality covers things like marketing strategies, referrals, things like that. Anything that's not publicly known about the business, normally that's what's outlined in the contract, needs to be confidential. And then lastly, under the restrictive covenants, you have your non-solicitation clause. This is normally for patients and then also for employees. And what this means is if you ever leave the practice or the employment, you cannot reach out, encourage, entice, poach former employees or patients. If they inquire and reach out to you, that's normally okay. You just can't be reaching out to them. So that's your non-compete, non-solicitation, confidentiality, all of your restrictive covenants. The other thing that you're really going to want to know when you're looking at your contract are signing bonuses. They're big right now in the healthcare industry. Lots of people offer them, and they're really enticing because they're large amounts of sum of income that you receive upon signing or starting your employment. The one thing you need to know, though, is they're 100% of the time, there's always some type of payback if you terminate your contract early. And it will state that. Sometimes it will say, 1 to 3 years, if you terminate this agreement, you have to pay the entire thing back. Or it may say you have to pay back a prorated amount. So you're forgiven a portion of it for every month that you work. I would recommend that, or, advocating for that, so that you don't have to pay back the whole sum. And also relocation expenses are included in there too. So these are just kind of the basics of what's normally included in a dental contract. You'll also have to think about scheduling and on-call duties. You'll want to know that. And then what type of actual services are you going to be providing? Are there going to be other providers there? Are you by yourself? These things should really be outlined so that there's no surprises whenever you start your employment. When you're negotiating your terms, it's important to know that it is common to negotiate. I get this question a lot from clients, like, should I really be asking for this? Yes, it is definitely understood. If you are asking for things to be changed or to negotiate maybe your salary or your percentage of collection, your future employer understands that this is part of the process. You just want to be respectful and objective whenever you're doing it. But yes, I would say that's definitely negotiable. And then what should you negotiate? So it really just depends. When you read through the contract, you'll want to know, a lot of people go straight for the salary to negotiate that amount. But I think things like the non-compete clause or your percentage of collections are probably the biggest things that I would try to negotiate. Benefits are normally included in a contract and they're not normally negotiable just because it's sort of like a standard policy for the practice. You also need to know how much leverage do you have to negotiate. So are you a seasoned dentist with lots of experience? Are you perhaps bringing patients with you? That's a lot of leverage. So you can really push to try to negotiate what you want. If you're straight out of school, unfortunately, you're going to have less leverage at the beginning. Doesn't mean you don't have any, but you want to take that into consideration. I always say ask for what you want. Just be direct about it. Don't ask them, what their budget is, that kind of thing. Just ask for what you want. As long as you are reasonable about this, the worst they can say is no, so you just want to remember that. If you like more questions, if you have more questions or you like more information, you can check out our website at Chelle Law, CHELLE law.com. Our phone number is also listed in the description of this video. We're happy to help you schedule a consultation. We can do a contract review and give you specific advice to your employment contract.